are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello, and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And before we dig into this week's movie, I just want to say the Earth is a little over 4.5 billion years old, and we are lucky enough to be alive the same time as one of the most incredible actors in cinematic history. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Nicolas Cage. Present.
Oh,
Now see if you're on your YouTube channel, you can see Kellen and I are wearing the same shirt. His is tainted with alien blood and semen from when we went and saw Guar.
And
it
semen.
just makes it that much cooler. So
Nice.
This week we're going to be talking about Nicolas Cage. Again, if you are watching on YouTube, you can already tell which movie by Kellen's background. But we're going to be talking about 2023's Renfield, directed by Chris McKay. This was only his second live action film, which I thought was strange. He directed The Tomorrow War, which I think came out last year with Chris Pratt on Amazon. It was pretty solid. But he's worked with Robot Chicken, and he did the Batman Lego movie. Mm-hmm. So I thought he did pretty good job with this one. But I digress. This is a newer film, so spoilers, obviously. It is streaming on Peacock. It is on demand. So if you would like to go check it out before you listen to us, we're okay with that. So yeah, 3, 2, 1, spoiler time. So Renfield, played by Nicholas Hoult, is a tortured aide of his narcissistic boss, played by Nicolas Cage, who is Count Dracula. He ends up going to a therapy session to try to get out of this toxic relationship. Dracula finds out, things go south. Great flick. I think this is my third time. One of us, however, has only seen it once, and that's today. So that's the gentleman we're going to start with.
Yay, me. Yeah, this was a movie that was on my radar when Jay pointed it out that Nicolas Cage was coming out with a vampire movie. And so I was excited about it. You know, huge Nicolas Cage fan. Even his garbage movies are enjoyable just for him. So was excited about it and then forgot about it. You know, it kind of came and went. As movies like this often do. You know, they don't get a big, backing, a whole lot of buzz. So I watched it. I started watching it yesterday evening and then finished it today. Did not pause because it was bad. This movie was fantastic. I loved it start to finish. The predictability didn't take anything away from it because of how fun the movie was. The violence is over the top, but fantastic. The fight scenes are good. The casting was phenomenal. If there was ever a role that was built specifically for Nicolas Cage in this stage of his career, aside from this movie, it has to be Renfield, because this is insane Nicolas Cage getting to be insane Nicolas Cage and playing a character that everyone already knows. So Nicolas Cage casting as Dracula, this style of Dracula in this movie was brilliant, and you can't convince me, even if the director was to just pop on the Zoomcast for no reason and be like, actually, no, you're lying to everyone. Your first choice was Nicolas Cage when you wrote this script. Don't try to convince me otherwise. He plays it so well, being, the narcissist, over the top version of Dracula. Like I said, the action in this movie is fantastic. Some of the kills are absolutely beautiful in the insanity of them. When Renfield and Rebecca are fighting the police in the end, and he rips the two arms off, and both of them are kind of shocked that he just ripped both of this guy's arms off, and then uses them as harpoons to kill two cops that are attacking Rebecca. Was just fantastic. Even the scene when he jumps and splits the guy in half in the little atrium area of the apartment complex, and he just kind of looks at her. Hey. Yeah, I absolutely love this movie start to finish. And talking to casting, Nicholas Hoult is fantastic in everything I've seen him in. I think he doesn't get enough credit for the type of actor that he is. Honestly, after watching this, I think he could play just about any kind of role. He does great in comedic, great serious actor. Ben Schwartz. Ben Schwartz is an underrated gem of a human being. Even back to his Parks and Rec day as John Ralphio.
The worst.
he's so good, and it's one of those things where he kind of plays the same character, but he's so good and enjoyable as that kind of over the top lovable douchebag character. Like, even though he's playing a piece of crap in most of his roles, you just love him. Even in the scene in the beginning where he gets arrested and he's giving away everything, the cops are like, we haven't even gone in the room yet, he's telling us everything. So yeah, I loved the movie. I loved a perfect amount of time. I mean, if it was any longer, I don't know that I would have gotten bored, but I feel like that they told exactly what they needed to in the time that they were given. And then last I want to mention, and Jay knows this, I absolutely adore Awkwafina. Everything I have seen her in.
As you should.
Everything I've seen her in, she's adorable, she's funny, she's fantastic. Even in Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi, she was great in that. Crazy Rich Asians as the eccentric friend, she was great in that. She's just hilarious and a joy to watch. So, I mean, honestly, I could probably try to like deep dive and pick apart this movie, but as far as just being enjoyable and fun to watch and just a great little side to the Dracula saga, this was just fantastic. So, yeah, John?
I absolutely agree. And, Robert Kirkman produced it and wrote the screenplay for it from Walking Dead fame. So that probably helped a lot as far as how well written it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nicolas Cage was born to play two characters, Superman and Dracula. And we've got 1.5 so far. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. You mentioned some of my favorite kills that we're going to talk about later, so we won't talk about that. But to pick up on the casting, I mean, even the flashback episode or flashback scenes with Nicolas Cage as the Bela Lugosi Dracula, like he looked exactly like him. Like if you told me that was that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That I believe you. But yeah, he was definitely the perfect role, perfect cast for that role. What'd you think, TJ?
Man, I love this movie, and I knew even before I watched it, I was going to love this movie because I love most all things Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult. Up to this point, yeah, I've pretty much liked everything Awkwafina's been in as well. So I had high expectations, and usually when I go in with that high of expectations, I'm usually disappointed or left wanting a little bit, but surprisingly not with this movie. And I've only seen it the once, and it's been a couple months because I watched it like opening weekend in the theater, and I haven't got around to it yet. But it's only because I'm holding off. I've spent my Blu-ray budget at the horror con, and so I'm gonna buy the Blu-ray next month. But yeah, so this, to my knowledge, and I haven't watched all of Nicolas Cage's direct-to-video movies of the last decade or so. I've seen some of them, but I think he has only played a vampire twice, and that was this film and the 1985's Vampire's Kiss, which still has one of my favorite scenes ever in an 80s comedy, where he's just running down New York City saying, I'm a vampire, and that terrible accent that I don't even know if he was affecting for a number of years in some of those 80s movies, or if that's just how he sounded until he got to Hollywood for a while. I don't know. But it's a voice only Nicolas Cage can make, and him screaming, I'm a vampire, is wonderful. And now he just gets to be that vampire for an hour and a half and be totally crazy. And it kind of, he's growing back in the arc of the story. He's growing back from a decomposed, burnt off, a CGI but monstrous kind of thing, kind of similar to some of the things that you would have seen in Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman in the early 90s, but a little more horrifying. So there's some things where he's like genuinely scary looking, but still being that wonderful Nicolas Cage character and putting on a terrible, crazy, whatever his version of the Bela Lugosi type accent is. I think that's some version of what he's trying to do. It's like a cross between that and the terrible, like New England accent of vampires.
And it's still one of those things that only Nic Cage could pull off, because any other actor would get ripped apart for doing a terrible accent, but Nicolas Cage does you like, Nick.
You
Right.
expect the terrible accent. It just adds to the campiness. And that's something that really is the difference between like a really enjoyable good movie is they know what kind of movie they're making. They're making a campy movie, and everybody's kind of tongue-in-cheek winking at the audience from scene one. So there's the movies that are that way that don't intend it to be, and sometimes they find their audience. And it still seems like though this is a movie that's going to gradually find its audience too, even though everyone knew what they were making and made it well. One of my favorite things, Jay already touched on it, was my favorite Universal horror film of the golden age of the 30s and 40s is the 1931 Bela Lugosi Dracula film. I've, like, no joke, I've probably watched that movie 100 times in my life.
Yeah.
Part of that's because it's only like 71 minutes. It's easy to watch.
That's only 100 more than I've ever seen it.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh, not
Oh
again.
my God. Kellen.
Not again.
Kellen spoils it again.
No.
We're going to do an episode of all the movies that we're horrified that Kellen hasn't watched. They're
It's
classics.
going to be like a 5-hour episode. Like,
It's just going to be a
It'd be a
continuing
5-part.
series.
And then I'm going to be like, but I've seen Hobo with a shotgun. And everyone will just cut their cameras off.
Oh God. I mean, I like Hobo with Shotgun. Rutger Hauer's great,
Fantastic.
Sure.
but I'm crying inside for you for that. But don't tell me you've seen Dracula Dead and loving it.
No.
Leslie Nelson. Okay, good.
Okay,
But, you know,
okay.
he said he's seen Hobo with a shotgun. He's seen Rubber, which is about a tire that gets consciousness, but he hasn't seen the original Dracula, and he watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time today. Let that sink the fuck in for a second, okay?
Oh, man. Well, I've seen
But
all
not
those
too long.
films. I mean, Rubber's great, and Rubber would fit in as a great double feature, honestly, with this just great campy movie. We're not doing best kills yet, so I'll just say I have loved Nicolas Cage for many years, but Nicholas Hoult I have liked since he was in a film in 2002 called About a Boy that for some random reason, like 17 years later, they made a TV series about. That had nothing to do with Nicholas Hoult or Hugh Grant, but also like that show. But Nicholas Hoult is just probably one of the better, more nuanced character actors of our time right now. And
Yeah, absolutely.
just the you can just read his face in this movie where he's, you know, basically playing the role of a kind of a domestic abusive relationship type survivor and of a narcissist. I think the group he's going to is like a Narcissist Anonymous or something like that. Yeah, like survivors of narcissists or anyway, which is wonderful that it just gives carte blanche for Nicolas Cage to totally play up the grandiose nature of you are my servant, you know, and you should bow before me and give me everything that I want. God, I mean, it's just it is the perfect. Whatever the nut was, they cracked the nut with that. The only negative I have about this movie, and probably nobody else but me will say this, is as much as I love Awkwafina, if you haven't heard her hilarious, I defy anyone to listen to on Spotify or wherever you get your music, My Vag, and not just bust a gut laughing at the lyrics of that song. It will give you a wonderful day. I don't buy her as the romantic counterpart to Nicholas Hoult's character Renfield in this, though. I think they were trying, and I just think they don't. They have like buddy chemistry, but they don't have romantic chemistry at all.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but it was more of that awkwardness is what made them attracted to one another because he was so awkward, she was so awkward. But yeah, I get that for sure.
Yeah,
Well, that and
I
the
think
fact
they
that she
kind of
actually was the
shoehorned
first
that.
one to see him. She was the first one to make him feel like he was more than a servant.
Yeah.
Which emotionally, emotional connection is way stronger than physical, but I still think she's adorable.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I like her in the movie. I just feel like they tried to towards the last quarter of that movie. I feel like they tried to shoehorn in a romance just because that's a Hollywood trope, and I don't think they earned that part. But aside from that, I love the three main principles. I love kind of where we ended things. I would love to see a sequel to this. I'm not holding my breath. I don't think it performed half as well as they wanted to. Hopefully, in
Or as it
DVD
should
and on
have.
demand, or as it should have,
Yeah.
100%.
It's going to be one of those that people are going to watch it on demand and everything, and it's going to blow up. Like,
Yeah,
I've
I
already,
think
like,
people will come
my
to
feed,
this
I already
like
see
5
people
years from now.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think
You know-
about it, Jay?
Nicholas Hoult, and this is not the first time he's co-starred with Nicolas Cage. They were in The Weatherman together. I don't know if any of you guys saw that.
Oh,
But
I
he was
forgot
I think he was
about
the
that.
son, wasn't he?
I think
but,
you're
yeah.
right. That was still when he was like a teenager.
This is my second favorite Nicholas Hoult film. The Menu is number one. Like him in The Menu playing
Menu's
that piece
great.
of garbage. He was so good as that. I mean, he's so good as an asshole. I love the movie. Nicolas Cage can't do much wrong. Like his straight to DVD stuff, most of that sucks. Like, sure, but his renaissance as of late it's been his best works. I think I was telling Lindsay, and like because we just watched the preview for Sympathy for the Devil, which is him and Joel Kinnaman, and he's just unhinged, and that's when he's at his best. Nicolas Cage unhinged. Don't even direct him. Just say, here's the direction we're going. Go. And he will blow your mind. And that's when he's at his best. That's what his roles have been lately. It's just been this crazy. Like even his Dracula, it's kind of off the rails a lot, a little psychotic. And he just plays that perfectly. I will watch anything he's in. I won't like all of it, but I will watch it just because of him. Nicholas Hoult too. Ben Schwartz, like Kellen said, is fantastic in it. The funniest thing about him, he's like, I got to call my mom. You should meet my mom. It's all about his mom with that deep ass voice. But he's fantastic in everything. The comedy aspect was kind of already there, but he brought it more front and center. Watching it again, my biggest takeaway was like how bloody it was. Like it's incredibly gory, which I love, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, Lindsay should watch this. And then after I watched it again, I'm like, Lindsay should not watch this. Like she will not like it because it's too bloody.
It's like Evil Dead 2 bloody.
Yeah, it's over the top for sure.
But I absolutely loved it. And you mentioned Vampire's Kiss. If you haven't seen that, check out your local dollar store because it's almost always there when I go. And it is well worth that $1.25.
Dollar Tree.
Yeah. But I loved it. Let's go to John and then we'll take it from there.
So I really love it. To be honest, I know that I'm going to get slack for this. I don't care. I like this more than Evil Dead Rise. I like this movie more than Evil Dead Rise. I liked Evil Dead Rise, but this is something that I would say I could rewatch more. Nicholas Hoult, I agree. He's terrific. I've loved him since I loved him in Warm Bodies. I think that's a really underrated film.
X-Men. He played X-Men as Beast. Like,
yeah.
He's good in that too.
Warm Bodies was great.
Yes. And I think it's funny, like, I know you guys were talking about it being a campy movie. It is. It's like, to me, the film is kind of a perfect horror comedy. It's kind of like in that vein of like, I don't want to say it's exactly the same, but, you know, like a Shaun of the Dead, Bubba Hotep. But what really works to me is that everyone does exactly what they're supposed to do and earnestly. You know, Nicholas Hoult plays Renfield, and you feel for him. He is Renfield. He feels like someone out of the 1930s, right? You know, Nic Cage is Dracula. And honestly, I kind of think Nic Cage is kind of fucking terrifying in this movie. Like, the way he plays it, it made me, when I watched this, I thought, you know what? Like, they could totally just do a straight up horror movie with him as Dracula. It would work, especially like when he's half mutated. That was horrifying. And he's like, mocking Nicholas Hoult and like, sticking his vein over him. And I read something that was kind of weird. And it makes sense now that Nic Cage was really inspired by American Werewolf in London before he did this. And I get it now because I forget his name in the movie, the friend who gets mauled by the werewolf. That's kind of the same look that he has in the middle of the movie when he's like transforming still and healing.
Yeah, he's got like skin flaps hanging off.
Yeah. So I guess that was kind of an influence in a way. But I really think it works, the horror comedy. It's hard to balance that. And I really think they did a good job of making it terrifying and bloody, but just very funny. Like, even the lines, like some of the lines, like when he's leaving the club and he gets the voice in his head, it's like, Renfield, what are you doing? Like, I don't know why, it just made me laugh. And the when Renfield is with Awkwafina at the apartment, and he's like, Snickerdoodle, like handing her the cookie, Snickerdoodle. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was really funny. I thought the whole ska thing was kind of cute.
Oh my god, that was so funny.
Yes,
it's kind of an underwritten thing, and it's so funny.
Yes.
Oh my god, who am I becoming?
And it's like,
it's all horns. That's a common misconception.
The cop is like, Ska's back. Oh no, he said Ska's not dead.
Great writing.
But I thought, it really worked on all ends for me. The comedy, the horror. I even liked some of the music cues they used in it. Little things that they did in the film that worked. Of course, the flashback sequence where they superimposed over the original film. That was a nice touch. The only thing that didn't work, if I'm nitpicking, and like I said, this is one of those, is this the greatest movie in the world? No, but it's a lot of fun. This is a blast, right? I agree with what you said, TJ. I think Awkwafina and Renfield, there's the buddy blooming romance thing. I'm glad they didn't kiss, because that would have been forced.
Yeah.
I think they knew not to go that far, because that probably would have been a little bit forced. But I also can understand what you guys are saying about it sort of being awkward. That's the point. The one other thing I would say that was kind of unnecessary was the whole gravelly voiced mom, the mob boss mom. I don't really think, like, if you took her out of the movie, you really didn't need her. She was just kind of a tie-in to Awkwafina's dad getting killed. So because I watched it again and I was like, you could basically have just made Ben Schwartz the head mob guy and it would have been the same. But like I said, that's nitpicking. It doesn't ruin anything. It's just, if I had to pick things that were, you could have taken out of the film.
Well, he was a little too whiny to be the leader. Like, they would have to write his character differently, I think, if they took the mom out. I agree. Like, she's probably my least favorite character in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Her voice, especially, like Dr. Girlfriend from the Venture Brothers. It was very strange.
Right. Little known fact: she's the voice of Gozer in Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Oh, really?
Okay.
The only other thing that was weird, that it's kind of an odd detail that I noticed, was when Awkwafina's sister, Rebecca, the character, her sister, was talking to her, and she said, yeah, this killer would be 70 or 80 years old. I thought to myself, I was like, in theory, if they're going, I mean, this is nitpicky, but like, wouldn't he really be like 120 or 130? If they're really
probably as far back as they could go for DNA evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, these are nitpicky things. This is not, I mean, like I said, that's probably the only thing I can point out in the movie. But other than that, I really loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I just really hope that we get more Nic Cage horror films. I want to see him play bad guys like this, so.
Yeah, he was definitely the best part. I mean, the way things are going from him, I feel like more of his recent works have been more horror centered, like Color Out of Space.
Mm.
He gets very manic in that. I don't know if you guys have seen that one or not, but fantastic. If we don't have anything else, we'll move on to the kills, and there were plenty of them. Kellen, since you went first, what was your favorite kill of the flick?
So, I mean, you could pinpoint individual ones. The bar fight scene. So many awesome kills in that one. And I don't. It kind of got touched on, but it's kind of a unique film where neither one of the main two characters are inept. Like, usually you get, like, especially like in Kevin Hart's most of his films, he kind of plays the bumbling sidekick to somebody. Awkwafina held her own throughout that whole film. Like, she was legitimate badass alongside Renfield. So when the fight scenes are happening, she's right there with him.
She's like the only non-dirty cop in the movie.
Yeah, when they all
whole
show up
city.
every cop. Yeah. But it was nice to see that it wasn't like one wasn't wholly reliant on the other. They were literally, almost back to back, just buzzing through all these people like the badasses they were. So I think if we're gonna just go with the way the movie is, you could go with the big butcher guy getting his head punched off. That was fantastic. But I'm gonna go kind of different than we've done before. The scene in the support group where Dracula punches Renfield back, and it shows him moving slow motion through the air as Dracula runs through all of them like they're nothing. And the reason being is, if you actually think about that specific scene, it shows just how powerful Dracula is. Because in the time it took him to fly through the air, which was maybe 2 seconds, real time, he mowed 8 people down without breaking a sweat. So I think that would be, as a whole, my favorite kill, just showing how badass Dracula was.
Yeah. TJ?
I think my favorite kill will forever be the one where he just rips off the guy's arms and then not only uses them, I think, to beat him with, but then uses them to kill 2 other people with. I mean, that just tells you what kind of movie you're in, and it's a joyous movie.
And Awkwafina rips one out of the guy's chest and hits a guy.
John?
I think the first scene when it's the early scene and Dracula, they break the protection circle, he turns into smoke and goes into the priest and blows him up. I just thought that was that's kind of a cool scene too, just because it's like really gives you the feeling and like they were saying, like, you're the last of our kind, you do this, it's on you now. So it really raises the stakes and lets you realize, like, this guy's been complacent and a part of this for like 100 years, so.
Yeah, and that gets you off running to the film too, because that's very early on. Mm-hmm. I had that one written down, and then I had the one where he punched the Lucha Libre looking guy's head off and it hit Ben Schwartz's car. That was a great one. The arm impalement and clobbering was fantastic. But the one that stuck with me the most from the first time I watched it, and then this time, was the one where he does split the guy in half, where they're at the apartment, he jumps down on the guy who's leaning off the stairwell and rips his body in half, because that was brutal. That was so brutal. Yeah. And that's the one that sticks with me the most, that one in the head punching. But all the kills were pretty fantastic. And you're talking about Awkwafina holding her own. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, I think maybe she was looking in a mirror and she saw someone was coming up behind Nicolas Hoult, and she's on her back. She takes her gun and turns it backwards and shoots the guy. Yeah. Badass.
Now Nicolas Hoult in this film does have a reflection, because he's not full vampire, right?
Right.
He's like a half familiar, I guess, whatever that is.
All right, so we got our favorite kills next. It feels like we haven't done this in a long time, because
I know, right?
Does it not? Like, I was writing notes today. I'm like, is that what we do? Yeah, that's what we do.
It's been
before we get to that, I just want to ask real quick, since we're all about the same age, the movie mentions ska several times. There are 2 things that stick out in my head when I think of ska. Just want to see if it's the same for all of us. Obviously, Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and then Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yeah, and Real Big Fish for me. Like, I love Real Big Fish.
For me, it's No Doubt and Tony Hawk.
No Doubt, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Especially that first album.
Yeah. All right, for Away to the World rankings. I'll go first. I gave it a 4, 4.5. But I'm gonna stick with 4. I think for this one, Kellen.
Yeah, same. I wavered between 4.5. But I mean, solidly a 4. On the high side of a 4.
TJ?
I was exactly the same, between 4.5. I'm going with 4, but there's definitely room to grow to 4.5.
All right, John.
Y'all really gonna do this to me? Dang it. So I would say, like, as far as enjoyment, rewatchability 5. But if I'm just ranking it among all other films, I have to say like 3.5. That's just and that's a great movie to me at 3.5. I'm gonna say 3.5. I'm gonna bring it down. I know.
Bring it down. Bring us down.
Cynical bastard.
Womp,
Cynical
womp,
bastard.
womp.
Well, that averages out to 3.8, which is a 4, so you lose anyway. So we're gonna give it a 4. Or
I
Nicolas
lose.
Cage's out of 5.
We round up here at the Horror Sanctum.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to wherever you're listening to this podcast now. Share it with your friends. That would be swell. Follow us over on Instagram for more content. Come join the Church Horror Sanctum on Facebook. It is a private group, but we would love to have you join in discussions about this podcast, about movies, trailers, books, whatever you want. Except pinhead dildos. Inside joke. We'll tell you one day. Be sure to come back next week where we interview the one and only Mr. George Hardy, most famously known for his role as the father in Troll 2. I know we have a couple listeners and friends who absolutely adore Troll 2, as we all do. So that was a fun one. I have so many reels for that one lined up already, and it's not even the episode itself. It's just from Troll 2 because it's just so ridiculously fantastic.
And you won't be able to piss on hospitality that week because he will not allow it.
He won't.
Make sure to bring your double-decker bologna sandwiches with you.
All right. So for John, Kellen, TJ, I'm Jay. And until next time,
keep it spooky.